Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a really good week so far, and if you live on the East Coast like me, I hope you're staying super cozy and super warm because this weather has been brutal. So obviously, judging from the title of this video, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about 3 different creepy cartoon theories from shows that I'm pretty sure everyone watched when they were a kid. My favorite show was Powerpuff Girls, and it's actually one of the TV shows that we're going to be talking about in this video. I'm just going to get straight to the point. All of these theories are pretty disturbing. One of them, I'm pretty sure everyone has heard at this point, but I haven't seen a video on it personally. And that's another thing I should say about these theories. These are just the theories that I haven't heard personally. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first theory, obviously, like I said, is going to be from the Powerpuff Girls. Was my absolute favorite show. I love this show so much. Anything Powerpuff Girls I had PJs, I had towels, I had bed sheets, I had toys. I think even one time for Christmas, my parents got me like this whole full-on like Powerpuff Girls tent. And growing up, we didn't do any type of camping or anything, so I would literally like pitch this tent in my bedroom, and I would just like sit in there and just do like whatever, but it was so much fun. I loved it so much. So the first theory about the Powerpuff Girls is actually going to be about him. And as I said, if you watched it before, you know exactly who he is, but for those of you who don't, it's okay. Him is actually, he's a villain on the TV show. He's the main villain, but he is so freaking creepy. He is the creepiest character I've ever seen in my entire life, and he always made me feel really, really uncomfortable when I was little. I'm going to try and put a video in, because the creepiest thing about him was his voice. Oh, even listening to it now, it gives me chills. So this theory is pretty disturbing, and it's actually going to be the only theory that I don't have a source on, because I read this theory, I don't even know how long ago I read it, but I read it a couple months back, and it wasn't off of an article or a website or anything. I read it on Facebook, and it was just like a shared post, and when I was researching for this video, I literally spent, I want to say maybe like a good hour and 30 minutes really trying to track down this theory, because, you know, you have to give credit where credit is due. For the life of me, I couldn't find it. So because of the fact that it was so disturbing to me, I kind of remembered the gist about it, and I really wanted to talk about it in this video, so let's go. So this theory pretty much says that him is actually transgender, and he had a brother that didn't exactly agree with his lifestyle. So the story is that he was in transition to become a woman, and he was actually going to be getting married. So on the day of his wedding, his brother kidnapped him and killed him. This is where it starts to get a little crazy, so just bear with me. Once his brother killed him, he removed the wedding dress and painted his skin red. Then he cut off his hands and replaced it with the lobster claws nose that he has. So once he did that, he started to dress him exactly the same way we see the cartoon character in the red fluffy coat with the thigh-high boots. So the next thing that he did was he took him to the center of their town, and he hung him up on display, and the only thing that was above him read "him" in capital letters. And that is how him became him. That one, even thinking about it now, it's so deeply, deeply disturbing. But I really wanted to talk about this theory because I never heard anyone else talk about it. As I said, I read it on a Facebook post, and I really like disturbing things. I don't know why. I hope I'm not the only one. But I really like reading creepy things about shows that I used to watch when I was younger. It's my thing. I don't know. Don't ask. The next theory that we're going to get onto is not any less disturbing, but it's a theory about Ed and Nettie. And if you haven't seen this show, I'm pretty sure it's still on Cartoon Network. I don't know. I haven't seen it in years. But pretty much it's just this TV show about three kids. All their names are Edward, but they go by different forms of Ed. Eddie, Double D, and Ed. Yeah. Along with the Eds. They live in a cul-de-sac. The show was based around them, like, summertime, because you never saw the kids go to school, but all of the kids would play in the cul-de-sac, and the Eds were kind of like child scam artists, because they would always play pranks on the kids of the cul-de-sac to get, like, quarters out of them, so they could go around and buy, jawbreakers. That was, like, the main thing of the show. That was their main purpose. So this theory speaks on all the kids are actually not having summer fun in a cul-de-sac, that they're actually all in purgatory. So this one is kind of long. Let's just do it. The first child that was to come to the cul-de-sac was actually Ralph. And Ralph apparently died in 1903 after being trampled to death by his family's animals, like their farm animals that they had, and what he was killed by was a goat, a cow, some pigs, and a chicken. So in the TV show, if you haven't seen it, Ralph is kind of like this kooky character who always speaks about how he misses his far-off land that he can't go back to, and he always talks about these crazy traditions that he has, and the animals that he pretty much always has with him is a cow, a couple goats, a pig, and a chicken. So that one's pretty sad. So the next child that came in was Johnny 2x4. And Johnny was kind of like a derpy kid. He always walked around with his best friend Plank, who was literally just a plank of wood. But let's get into how he died. So Johnny died in 1922 from TB, and if you don't know what TB is, it's tuberculosis. So the theory says that Johnny was actually a really lonely child, and he just had an imaginary friend that he just called Plank. So when he died and went to purgatory, he obviously brought his friend Plank with him. And to explain why Plank is literally just a plank of wood, the theory says that a plank of wood was actually the last thing that Johnny saw before he died, so that's why Plank is a plank of wood. So, there's that one. And the next child that was to come is Eddie. So, Eddie was from New York in the 1930s, and he was a scam artist. Something, obviously, he took with him to the afterlife. That one day, in the 1930s, he ran a scam on the wrong group of people, and they chased him into a lake, and that's where he drowned, and he died, taking him to purgatory just to scam the other kids. So the next kids that were to come, and these two came in a pair, is Ed and Sarah. Their father was in World War II and tragically died, and that kind of sent their mom into like this crazy grief, and she kind of snapped and detached from reality altogether and just stopped being there for her kids. So that theory is also supposed to explain why Sarah is so bossy and kind of always wants to be in charge, because she's kind of taking the place as the mother that she never had. So, unfortunately, the same thing happened to Ed, and this explains why he's always so into these crazy sci-fi movies and these aliens and these comic books. It's because he needed a world to dwell into so he can kind of escape the reality of his home life. Unfortunately, in 1953, all three of them actually died in a terrible car crash, and that's what brought Ed and Sarah to purgatory, or the cul-de-sac, with the rest of the kids. This one, I think, is the most disturbing, and it's about Naz. So, Naz was born to hippie parents, and this explains her kind of free and like her free spirit. Where Naz used to live, there was an insane asylum, and a serial killer escaped, made his way into their house, raped and killed her, and did the same to her family. And instead of going to heaven, she went to purgatory. She blocked out the incident that happened, and a lot like Ed, kind of dwelled into a reality of her own, so she didn't think about what happened to her. And this also explains why, and now looking back at it, when I read this, it makes creepy sense, because in the TV show, I don't think it ever shows Naz in her home, and that's what this theory explains, saying that the reason why you never see Naz in her home is because she wants to escape the reality of what happened in her home, so that's why she's just always out and about. So the next child, Double D, Double D was actually born to helicopter parents, and this actually explains a lot, because Double D is actually a very uptight kid, always kind of stressing over the fact that he needs to please his parents, and always needs to do everything right for mother and father, as he says, and how, he's a crazy neat freak, and how a speck of dust will just make them so angry, and he'll get grounded, and all this other crazy stuff. Obviously, his parents pushed him to succeed academically, and unfortunately for Double D, there was a gas leak in his house on the day that he was playing with his chemistry set, and he died in, I'm guessing, an explosion because he was playing with his Bunsen burner. So the next child to come is actually Kevin. And Kevin is like the bully of the Eds. He's always pretty mean to them, like the pranks they do, and the funny thing is they always get him. They always scam him, and they always get a quarter from him. Kevin was actually born the day that Double D died. So, unfortunately for Kevin, he was born to a broken family with an abusive father who had a really, really, really bad drinking problem. He suffered from a lot of abuse from his father, and because of that, he unfortunately brought that to school, and he was actually a very big bully, something that he unfortunately took with him to the afterlife. But the theory says that Kevin died in an ambulance on the way to the hospital after being beaten by his father, who was in a drunken rage. So I think the saddest thing about Kevin was that when Kevin died and went to purgatory to join the other kids, he actually reimagined his father. And that's why in the TV show, he always talks about, like, his dad got him this, and his dad is so cool, and his dad is so sweet. He reimagined his father to be the man that he wanted him to be the whole time. The last kid to come is Jimmy. Jimmy unfortunately died in the 2000s due to leukemia, and because of the fact that he was so young, he went to purgatory and joined the other children. So that's about it for the kids. The other three characters that this theory did mention, and this one really made me feel a certain way. The next characters that are in the TV show that were actually in purgatory are the cankers. And this theory explains that the cankers they're not really human spirits. They're described as something more sinister, maybe even demons. So the reason that the cankers are there are pretty much to haunt the weak-willed children, which unfortunately are the Eds. That's why in the TV show they're depicted as always being obsessed with the Eds and having a crush on the Eds. But in reality, the Eds are just so weak-willed that the cankers see them as an easy target, which is a little bit sad. So the next theory we're going to be talking about is the Rugrats theory. So this theory explains that Angelica is actually the main protagonist of the show. She suffered from mental health issues, causing her to hallucinate the whole Rugrats group. So pretty much saying that she is actually in that family. There is an Uncle Stu, there is an Aunt Dee, there are her mom and dad, but there were unfortunately no babies. It was just Angelica in her mind imagining it because she was actually a very lonely child. So, let's start with Angelica's family. So, this theory explains that Angelica's family that Angelica actually had a really superficial relationship with her father, and the mother that they show in the show is not really her mother, it's more of her stepmother, but she's very busy, kind of, she doesn't have time for Angelica, kind of just like shoos her away when she can, because she'd much rather work and be, all about herself. So this theory also goes on to explain Cynthia. So Cynthia in the TV show is Angelica's beloved Barbie doll. She never wants to part with Cynthia. And when you look at the TV show, you're like, you know what? It's innocent. Like, yeah, like the doll looks creepy, but it's her favorite toy. All had a toy like that we did not want to part with. I think mine was like a red bear, and I still have that bear. Cynthia is actually a depiction of Angelica's biological mom. And Angelica's biological mom was actually a crackhead who I think died when she was a baby. The article didn't really explain that too well, but let's just assume she died. I don't know. And that explains why Cynthia looked jacked. Like, she's missing like parts of her hair. Her dress is all like raggedy and kind of ripped, I think. So I thought that was really interesting when I read that. The next child that we're going to talk about is Tommy.
A baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do.
And all of this is really sad. I'm not going to be like, oh, like this one's really sad. This is the saddest one of them all. No, they're all sad. So the theory explains that Tommy was actually a stillborn, and Stu, as his dad, kind of snapped from the grief and went crazy and started making all of these toys in his basement for Tommy. And in the TV show, they just depict him as being like a driven toy maker, but in reality, he was just, out of grief. He was just making all these toys for his son that never got to live. And the next kid we're going to be talking about is Chucky.
Well, it's getting late, Chucky. What do you say we head home?
And unfortunately, Chucky and his mom, who they never say, it's just assumed that she passed away in the TV show. They always show pictures of her, but they never really say what happened to her. The theory is that Chucky and his mom actually died in a car crash, and that explains why Chaz is kind of a nervous wreck. Later on, Chaz actually travels to Paris and he meets Kira. So Kira was introduced in the Rugrats Go to Paris movie, or it's called something like that, Rugrats to Paris, I don't know. In the movie, it shows that Kira was like an assistant to a fashion designer person, I think, but in reality, Kira was a drug-addicted prostitute who had a daughter, Kimmy, but was taken away from her because she was an unfit mother. So after Chaz married her, he took her back to the States, but she would always speak about Kimmy and all the memories that they had together, and Angelica would hear them from time to time, and that's why you see Kimmy in the normal Rugrats TV shows. The next kids that we're going to be talking about are Phil and Lil. The theory is that Phil and Lil's mom actually had an abortion, but obviously Angelica never knew if it was a boy or a girl, so she created twins. One boy, one girl. So the next baby, or the last baby that we're going to be talking about, is actually Dill.
I'm doing the best I can. Look out!
And Dill was actually a real child. But because Angelica was already so detached from reality with, all of her hallucinations, she never really could understand why Dill wouldn't listen to her, or why he wouldn't disappear with the other babies when they made her mad. So one day, out of anger, she struck Dill in the head over and over again, but fortunately, Stu walked in and caught her and made her stop. But unfortunately for Dill, she had already done the damage, and it also explains why in the TV show, Rugrats All Grown Up, why Dill is kind of just like different, like the odd one out. The last kid in this theory is actually Susie, and Susie was real as well. And it seems that Susie was her only real friend. She played along with Angelica and her imaginary friends. So that is all the theories I have for you guys today. I really, really hope that you liked it, as much as I enjoyed researching for it. As always, I'm going to leave all of my social media links down below. And yeah, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!